have spent this morning discussing policies, laws, and campaigns to achieve our objectives. And while all those things are important, I would like to encourage us throughout the day to reflect on why we have chosen to be advocates. What injustice did you experience that made you say enough and made it clear to you that you could no longer stand on the sidelines and that you must finally act? Mine occurred during the summer of 2007. It was early in the morning of June 4th, 2007, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents burst into the homes of 8 Latino families in New Haven, Connecticut. They took men and women away from their sleeping children, packed them into waiting vans, and transported them to detention centers in 2 different states. At the time, I worked at Junta for Progressive Action, a nonprofit organization serving the Latino community in New Haven. When I arrived to work that day, the office was in chaos. Families huddled together, crying and attempting to comfort each other. Phones ringing of people asking for help, trying to find their family members, and asking if it was safe to pick up their children from school. I was asked to watch over the children of a woman whose husband was taken by ICE and was getting assistance from an attorney. The children didn't speak much. We just sat there at the table coloring. But the youngest stopped coloring and asked me, "Why is my mom talking to the lawyers?" I said, "To find your father." She asked, "Did my father do something bad?" I insisted, "No, your father didn't do anything bad." She then asked me, "So why did the policeman take my father?" I didn't have an answer to her question. I didn't have an answer to lots of questions that day. But that is largely the reason I decided to study law, to become an advocate. I vowed to myself that I would never again be left speechless when someone in need of answers and of justice came to me for help. That day was the day that I decided that I was finally going to act. It is easy to abstract poverty and inequality into statistics and legal concepts. Much of our work requires such framing. But behind the numbers and the legal jargon are people. So as we continue throughout the rest of our day, I would like to encourage us to think about that moment, the people, the individual, that set us on our mission for social justice. And now, we'd like to present you a short film that represents Shriver's commitment to justice for communities. Thank you.
Across our nation, the fight for justice and equality continues. When we talk about a movement, we talk about people, everyday people who choose to stand up for their communities.
We can't wait to end poverty because every day we do wait, we thrive less as a society.
We shouldn't just be asking folks to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps, but we should be thinking about how we can continue to reach back as we continue to move ahead.
Only then, when we listen to communities and work on their behalf with them, in support of them, will equity be achieved.
The Shriver Center works on what I call the front lines of humanity every day. And I think their work is, in Daddy's name and in Daddy's legacy, but in our time. I think the lawyers and those who work at the Shriver Center are doing their own work. They're building their own legacies, maybe in the spirit of Sargent Shriver, but they wouldn't be there if there wasn't something burning in them. His belief wasn't like, let's go around and, where's the next Sargent Shriver, but to ask yourself, where are you? What are you doing? And he really believed that he could eradicate poverty in this country, and he wanted people to see how people live, and he thought by getting you to see and getting you to feel, you would change.
In Chicago's Latino community, a young woman, Graciela Guzman, saw the critical need for helping people understand and enroll in healthcare coverage.
My family immigrated to the country from El Salvador back in 1989, right around the time that I was born. When we first arrived, didn't speak a word of English, and my role in the family was always translator. Around that time, my grandfather became ill, And in the process of that, as an undocumented person in this country, I saw what his experience was like. He passed away shortly after, and being so young and hearing the hospital try to justify why they weren't taking care of my grandfather and have to relay that to my family was difficult. Navigating that healthcare scenario is what I try to avoid.
The Shriver Center has trained nearly 2,000 healthcare navigators like Graciela to help their communities access the information they need to get healthcare.
And so when I think about the impact of what happens when we don't produce change right now, when we don't start implementing actionable change soon, it's not just times lost, it's lives lost. And it's human capital. It's economic capital, but for me, what matters most is that human capital, that quality of life.
In Fairmont, Illinois, a small rural town just outside of Chicago, Delinda Herod is fighting the construction of a proposed 4-lane highway that would divide her town in half.
My parents moved to this home here in 1959, I believe. So I've been here for you could say all of my life, minus a year or two. Because you hear the little bit of noise that we can hear right now? Imagine if a 4-lane highway was right behind us. That's what they're proposing to do to me personally. We're going to be sitting at our homes looking at a highway. And our kids are going to have to get out here each morning. That could be 4 trips per day crossing that very dangerous highway for our children. So I don't like anything about that. So we have the lowest property value. So that makes us the lowest hanging fruit.
The Shriver Center has helped the residents of Fairmont demand more public input and a reevaluation of the route selection from county and federal authorities.
We couldn't have done it without them. Without Kate Walls and the Shriver Center, we had voices, but we didn't have a means of getting their attention. But they have no choice now that it's moved over to a Title VI civil rights complaint with the Federal Highway Administration. You can't ignore the federal government, and that's what it took to get their attention.
In Calumet City, workers are pushing to increase the minimum wage to $15 for all workers, including tipped workers who currently earn only $4.95 per hour.
Hay algunos restaurantes que no pagan el salario mínimo. Yo trabajé, incluso me pagaron hasta $2 de mesera. Yo en ese tiempo era mamá soltera. Yo quisiera que toda la gente de los restaurantes donde no les pagan el mínimo, que hablen, que levanten la voz. Eso va a haber más pobreza si lo quieren dejar así.
The Shriver Center, in partnership with local advocates in El Centro, are working to ensure the one fair wage policy is strong and covers all workers fairly. Sabeth represents one of more than 4 million tipped workers in the United States.
La gente no va a pedir algo más porque quiere, que los escuchen.
In East Chicago, Indiana, a century of development in the steel and railroad industries has left a legacy of pollution in the community. Akeisha Daniels is fighting for justice.
Last year this time, we found out that we were living on top of a lead refinery. I had been in the West Calumet housing complex for 13 and a half years, where I've raised 3 sons. We received a letter from the mayor stating that we had to move out of the complex due to the lead crisis. Inside of my home, we tested at a 32,000 with lead, 800 with arsenic, and I believe outside in the soil was 91,000. My children had had a lot of bouts with like scarlet fever. My son Xavier has ADHD, asthma, and he was allergic to 30 out of 60 things that he was tested for. Now my 19-year-old has had a lot of digestive problems. We've had tonsils and adenoids removed for so many bouts of strep throat, and now we have scoliosis where he has a curvature in his spine at 19.
The Shriver Center ultimately won an agreement that ensured residents receive comprehensive relocation assistance, more time to find housing, and no longer have to make rent payments for their contaminated units.
And I thank the Shriver Center for everything they've done. Fighting with housing, giving us an extension on different things, just things that they did that no one else came to our rescue to do. And I want to publicly thank them for that, because nobody else came. Nobody else showed up.
One person's story is an anecdote. One court case is a footnote. We choose the stories and cases that will change a whole system.
We can't wait to create a more just and equitable society because it's long overdue.
The opportunity to be a part of that, to help make that happen as an individual, I mean, that's a team that I would want to join.
At the Shriver Center, we're all here in this fight together, supporting each other, figuring out how to fix any number of problems. There's a community here of people who care, who've dedicated their lives to this work, and who are not giving up.
At this moment in the history of poverty law, I don't think we can look back and say we haven't been given a great gift. We were given a great gift. The lawyers of today were given great gifts by the lawyers in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s who built this center. The question now for those who believe in it is what will they leave to the future?
We can't wait because we've waited too long. The time is now.
Join us in this fight for justice, every day for everyone.
No, thank you. Thank you all for being here. I'm so proud of my colleagues who do all that work, who put that video together, who organized today's event, the Summit on the Future of Justice. And so I'm proud to work with all of you, wherever you are in the room here. We also need to pay special thanks today to the Aarp Foundation, who is the lead sponsor not only of today, but of all of our 50th anniversary celebration work, including the benefit that we had in October where we first showed this video. So we're really tremendously grateful to the Aarp Foundation, who fights for people in poverty and takes particular care of the people who are over the age of 50. But they work across the spectrum on a host of issues, and we're really grateful to them. So this anniversary has given us a chance to reflect and think back on 50 years of work, but it also gives us a moment to think about the future as we turn into our next 50 years and think about the babies being born today. We're going to get that letter from AARP 50 years from now. And what kind of world will they be in, right? What will we have done now that will improve their condition then? And that's what we're doing here today. And so that's wonderful. I want to introduce you now actually to a champion for people in poverty of every age. Lisa Marsh Ryerson is the president of the AARP Foundation, which is AARP's sort of affiliated charity. Since 2013, she's been at the helm, setting the strategies and leading special social impact initiatives. She's also a member of AARP's executive committee for the whole operation. And they're the largest nonprofit, nonpartisan organization serving people over the age of 50. Lisa joined AARP Foundation after 18 years as the president and CEO of Wells College in Aurora, New York, where she increased enrollment by 45%, which helped to invigorate the surrounding community. And she, among many other things, launched the Endowed Center for Business Enterprise at Wells College. She brings that same innovative flair to the foundation, where the mission is to create and advance effective solutions for vulnerable adults to meet their basic needs. She's creating new relationships with high-profile organizations to address poverty and people over the age of 50 in the 4 related areas of unemployment, insufficient food, inadequate housing, and social isolation. That's a wonderful agenda, and Lisa's a great leader. I give you Lisa Marsh Ryerson.
thank you to John. I mean, just a huge round of applause to John and Kate and Venu and the entire team at Shriver. Incredible leaders. From our point of view at AARP Foundation, it's just a great delight, John, to be able to sponsor your 50th anniversary year as we continue to work alongside you and really support all of the important work that you're doing in communities across this nation. So thank you for a very fruitful partnership. I am also delighted to be here with members of my team at AARP. So really happy to have my colleague Charlotte Castillo with me, and somewhere out there from AARP Illinois, Ruby Houghton Pitts is with us. Ruby as well. And AARP Illinois is rocking it each and every day here. So we are really thrilled to be here. You know, I've had a chance to sit through our sessions, the tracks this morning, and I have to say it's such an incredible day. I am so proud to be able to say that we've sponsored this inaugural summit. And it's incredible because of expert panelists and speakers, but also because of the rich interaction that all of you who are here today attending have added to the value of the dialogue. So on my mind is that we've talked in these sessions about individual people as well as communities, that we've talked about problems as well as possibilities, and that we've talked about the importance of evidence as much as we've talked about the importance of inspiration. So what a great day, and to think there's an afternoon of more panels to follow. AARP Foundation was founded just a few years before the Shriver Center in 1961 as the charitable affiliate of AARP, as John said, and AARP itself arose from a strong sense of social justice in its founder, whose name, a great woman, Ethel Percy Andrus. And Ethel had been a high school principal in California, and one day she was volunteering to check up on retired teachers and a former colleague. And as she was doing this, she found a retired teacher who was in such difficult straits that after all of her years of service as a public school teacher, she was forced to live in a chicken coop. And Ethel couldn't stand the injustice of that situation. Fortunately for all of us, she couldn't, and it prompted her to start the organization that eventually became AARP. So caring for our neighbors, watching out and helping the less fortunate was Ethel Percy Andrus's original vision. And she once said, our community is the place where we can and must be most effective. And we all know, this group gathered today, that the strength of individual communities and of our nation actually depends on the well-being of every member, of everyone in community. And we all suffer, in fact, when the contributions and talents of any member are subtracted from the opportunities in the community. As John let you know, at AARP Foundation, we hold the fight against poverty, and for us, senior poverty in particular, as our central focus. Our vision is a country free of poverty where no older person feels vulnerable. We know that people live whole lives in community. We've always, of course, known that, but existing systems haven't always addressed the needs of people as whole people or whole individuals. The solution, we believe, at AARP Foundation requires adopting new, innovative, integrated perspectives, really the type of collective impact that we have discussed throughout today. We must recognize, of course, and understand all of the interrelated factors that can send and do send vulnerable people into a terrible downward spiral. And when we do so, I believe when we think in this kind of holistic way or manner, we're in a much stronger position to work toward permanent solutions rather than simply intervening amid a torrent of problems. Poverty in all of its manifestations is a burden for too many people in our nation. And we've been working to overcome it for quite some time now, haven't we? And yes, we've moved the needle. We've had achievements. But perhaps you're as frustrated as I am that we have not moved the needle enough, that sometimes we seem to be having the same conversations over and over again. And so it's vital that we make candid assessments of our work to evaluate what we're doing right and what we need to do differently as we move forward. Perhaps then, we can look forward to coming together and having new conversations in the years ahead. But one of the things that we need to talk about now is that poverty is in fact becoming a growing burden for older adults, increasing numbers of whom are spending their later years in hardship and in desperation. And sadly, senior poverty is very much a hidden problem in communities and in this nation. Too many people still think the social safety net takes perfectly good care of older people, that all of their needs are being met. It just isn't true. The safety net has gaping holes, and literally millions of seniors are falling through them. Right now, there are approximately 100 million people age 50 and older in the country, and 10,000 people turn 65 every single day. I'm here to tell you that is fabulous news, because that means that we have an opportunity to live longer lives, and that collectively we have an opportunity to benefit from the value of the contributions across the lifespan of individuals in our communities. The problem is, of course, that there is a danger that so many may not actually live better lives. Right now, between 25 and 40% of people 50 and older have no money saved for retirement, none, not a penny. And they may not be poor yet, but it's not hard to see what's coming for them in the future. We must also call attention to the plight of so many older adults already straining under the burden of poverty. A staggering 37 million adults who are 50 or older do not have adequate resources to meet the most basic of needs. And a recent report by the Urban Institute reveals that 13.2 million working older adults are classified as low income. It's shameful, it's wrong, it's an injustice. And so where are we headed? At Aarp Foundation, our approach involves focusing on all of the external factors in people's lives that can and do affect their health and their well-being. That means we're focused on social determinants of health. As you know them, the unmet social needs that lead to preventable health conditions and a lower quality of life. The common threads in the issues affecting low-income older adults is the work that we focus on and that John referenced. They include food insecurity, unaffordable and inadequate housing, low income, including unemployment or low income, low-wage workers, and social isolation. All have negative health consequences and all lead to vicious cycles in people's lives. So these are the targets of the work at Aarp Foundation, but we're ever mindful that behind all of this lies the root cause, which is poverty. Poverty is the chief social determinant of health. It's a health issue not only for individuals, but also for our society. Poverty is a societal illness, yet so often, right, it's viewed as an individual failure rather than a systemic problem. And that's the kind of thinking we must move the public beyond. Poverty is not only corrosive, it's also expensive for individuals and for society as a whole. Just ask someone who is poor and struggling to pay off payday loans or emerge from a cycle of evictions, someone who's trying to find and then cope with a high cost of nutritious food in food deserts, someone who is living paycheck to paycheck. And hunger alone costs our nation $167.5 billion in additional health care costs, lost economic productivity, and of course other factors. In the last years of his life, Martin Luther King Jr. began to focus on poverty as a national illness. In a speech that he gave less than 1 year before his death, just about the same time as the founding of the Shriver Center, he noted that tackling poverty, tackling economic inequality would be a great challenge for our nation. And he called it out as what it is, it was a national crisis. Poverty is undeniably a racial problem. It's an ethnic problem. It's a gender problem. It's an LGBTQ problem. But I believe our only chance of making real progress is to acknowledge that poverty is fundamentally America's problem. It's a problem affecting all of us, and all of us need to work together to solve it. So many of you here today work actively in communities to protect the rights of those suffering under poverty's burden. And our litigation team at AARP Foundation also stands up for the powerless in our nation's courts. In fact, AARP Foundation litigation has joined happily and proudly with the Shriver Center to advocate in the courts on behalf of low-income individuals and families, including older and vulnerable adults. Together, we have urged courts to strike down barriers to obtaining health insurance under the Affordable Care Act and to promote the interests of Medicaid beneficiaries against state laws and policies that undermine federal protections for the poor. We at AARP Foundation look forward to increasing our litigation efforts to help low-income older adults earn a living, age in place, avoid fraud, abuse, and neglect. And we hope to have the Shriver Center and many of your organizations by our side in our fight for elder justice as often as we can. I know that many of you here today participate and work in legal service organizations and agencies, and know that I thank you deeply for all that you do on behalf of your clients. At AARP Foundation, we recognize the critical role that legal aid organizations play in the lives of our most vulnerable neighbors. This is especially true in times of crisis and disaster, which is why AARP Foundation has allocated over hundreds of thousands of dollars recently to legal service organizations across the nation to assist individuals adversely affected by Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. And some of you are here today, and it's been a delight to meet you personally. We're proud to support you and your colleagues as you help to rebuild individual lives and communities, because we need to be there for those big catastrophes. But we also need to be there for the other quieter disasters and catastrophes that are happening each and every day. The catastrophes of need affecting millions throughout our nation. And that involves a close connection with those we serve. We need to be in community, for community, by community. We must all find the ways to work together collectively to magnify our impact. And as has been said throughout the day, we must hold those we serve and work with as true partners in the work alongside us as we co-create solutions, sustainable, scalable solutions for them and communities, and as we provide the tools and resources necessary so that they, in fact, can truly access opportunity. I'm reminded, as I'm talking with you, of the often quoted important phrase, "Nothing about me without me." In these divisive times, we must face up to the reality that inequality remains rampant in our society. We must be champions for equity, always striving for equity, intentionally and actively. It's about driving outcomes and ensuring that everyone has a seat and a stake. It's about righting the numerous imbalances. And so we must be vigilant now more than ever. We must speak loudly for those whose voices are not heard. Speaking in the courts and also in the public courtyards, we must continue to speak together with a strong, clear voice of justice. And of course, that's what Sargent Shriver was all about. That's what all of you in your many forms of service are all about. You know, that speech that Martin Luther King Jr. gave in 1967 was called, as you'll remember, The Other America. One America, Dr. King said, is overflowing with the milk of prosperity and the honey of opportunity, and the other constantly transforms the buoyancy of hope into the fatigue of despair. I know, I have confidence that we must and can build and sustain a different transformation. And as we do so, know that I applaud and honor you individually and collectively for the commitment you have to the cause. Thank you.